Welcome back, my brothers and sisters. This is Model 2 Part 2, talking about the true Sabbath and holy holidays. Thanks for joining. Let us continue from where we left off in Model 2 Part 1. Now that we have all the components to describe what makes up a day, a month, and a year, let us now answer the questions, starting with what is a day. Well, we already mentioned that the earth is oblate spheroid in shape, meaning it is not perfectly round and it tilts on its axis. It also spins on its axis, and according to Wikipedia, a day is the time the earth takes to rotate or spin fully on its axis, which is roughly about 24 hours. The Oxford Dictionary also defined daylight as dawn. It further defined dawn as the first appearance of light in the sky in the morning. Hence, the day begins at dawn, which is the first appearance of light, not sunrise. Dawn comes before sunrise. The Oxford Dictionary defines sunrise as when the sun rises. To illustrate, picture this. But remember, light travels in a straight line, okay? So picture a car with lights on coming to turn onto a road. For example, the car is coming to make a right turn. Before the car reaches the corner to turn, you would have started to see the first appearance of light from the car. Think of that first appearance as dawn. When the car actually turns and you're able to see all of the lights, now that would be like sunrise. So therefore, dawn comes before sunrise, and that is when the day begins, at dawn. In the same token, dusk is the last light, and that is when the day ends. But what is the biblical definition of a day? Well, in Genesis 1 verse 2, Yahweh pointed out that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Hence everywhere was black. Therefore all things come from black. Furthermore, in verse 4, the Father separated light from darkness. And in verse 5, he called the light day, and the dark he called night. Then he said the evening and the morning was the first day. Let us break this down. First there was darkness, which is evening. Then there was light, which is morning. Now together they make the first day, which is 24 hours. Obviously, evening had to be first because darkness was first. But brothers and sisters, don't get confused. He called the light day. So the first appearance of light, which is dawn, is the start of day. And it ends at the last appearance of light, which is dusk. Obviously, our Father was making a very, very clear differentiation between day and night in a 24-hour period. Meaning, while a full day takes 24 hours, the portion of the 24 hours that has light is in fact the day portion of the day. Later in the presentation, you will see that the Sabbath is only the day portion of the day, not the full 24 hours. Before we jump to the Sabbath though, let us talk about weeks. According to Wikipedia, the original Roman calendar had 8 days weeks and 10 months year. So back then the week was made up of 8 days. Julius Caesar then copied the 7 days week from us, Israel, run about 46 to 45 BC, and replaced the then Roman calendar with his Julian calendar. Then in about 1582, Pope Gregory changed the Julian calendar, and we are using this Gregorian calendar to this day. These are solar calendars, meaning they are based on the position of the sun in relation to the earth and other stars. They do not correspond to the cycle of the moon. Sounds crazy, right? Seeing all these errors from back then. 8 days week. Well, don't take my word for it. Just Google Julius Caesar and Julian calendar. Do your own research. Plus, there's more. Just follow me. Today we are using the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar, indicating that the earth revolves around the sun every 365.25 days. This revolution is called a year, and it is from this revolution where we get our seasons. Notice from the picture how the tilt and the shape of the earth causes the northern hemisphere to have winter while the southern hemisphere have summer. This is also more proof that the earth is not flat. If the earth was flat, we would all have the same season at the same time. Well, so far we have spoken about days, weeks, years, and seasons. What about months? How do we account for months? So according to the Oxford Dictionary, a month is each of the 12 periods into which a year is divided. So in its simplest form, a month is 365 days divided by 12, which equates to about 30 days make a month. We know that this is not exactly as it sounds, because some months have 30 days, some months have 31 days because it's 365 and a quarter days. But let's just keep it simple. However, from a biblical perspective, months are extremely important to the children of Israel because they determine the true calendar, the true Sabbath, and the true holy holidays. If you look on your Gregorian calendar on your wall, you'll probably see something called a new moon. From a scientific view, the new moon is when the moon makes a complete revolution around the earth. Upon completing its revolution, the moon passes between the earth and the sun, but it passes at an angle, so it does not completely block the sunlight. However, at this point we cannot see the moon, it is in darkness. But from a biblical perspective, when the moon is in darkness, it is not considered new moon. It is considered new moon when we are able to see the first appearance of the moon, usually the next day at dawn. This is after the scientific new moon, which is called a day after conjunction. It is the same principle as a day. Just like the first appearance of light, which is dawn, from darkness is when the day begins. In the same way, the first appearance of the moon from darkness, again at dawn, is when the biblical new moon occurs. Note that the biblical new moon and the scientific new moon are not in sync. The biblical new moon occurs after the scientific new moon. So why is the biblical new moon important to us, the children of Israel? Well, from the Bible, the new moon is when the true month begins. Check this out. In 1 Samuel 20 verse 5, David said to Jonathan, "Tomorrow is a new moon, but I will not come and eat at King Saul's table as usual. Tomorrow I will hide." Then in verse 18, Jonathan said, "Tomorrow is a new moon, and you, David, shall be missed, because your seat will be empty." In verse 24, you see when tomorrow came, which is a new moon day, King Saul sat down to eat, but David was missing, because he was hiding in the field as he said he would. Note in verse 26, Saul did not ask about David that day. That day was a new moon day. Then in verse 27, the day after tomorrow, which is the day after the new moon, the Bible clearly said the second day of the month. Saul asked about David that day. Saul asked, why did David not come yesterday, which was the new moon day, nor today, which is the day after the new moon? Brothers and sisters, the key point is the Bible said the second day of the month. Hence the first day of the month, the new moon day, must be the beginning of months. Now, to reinforce the importance of the new moon, look in Numbers 28 verse 10. It shows the offering that you should give every Sabbath. Notice in verse 11, it also shows the offerings for the beginnings of our months, which is what? It's the new moon day. Furthermore, in Numbers 10 verse 10, it says we should blow our trumpets in the beginnings of our month, which is a new moon day. And in Psalms 81 verse 3, it specifically uses the term new moon day to blow our trumpets. Finally, in Isaiah 66 verse 22, here our Father is outlining our future after the end times, where there will be new heavens and a new earth. This is also shown in Revelation. Note in verse 23, he says, from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all shall worship him, our Father, Yahweh. So in the new times, brothers and sisters, even then we're going to be observing the new moon. So here's the thing. Clearly, The new moon is the beginning of our months. Hence, if the new moon is the first of the month, then 7 days after the new moon day is a Sabbath. And every 7 days after that is a Sabbath until the next new moon day. Remember, in Genesis 2 verse 2, on the 7th day, Yahweh ended his work and rested on the 7th day. So if the first day of the month is a new moon day, then 7 days after that takes you to the 8th, and that is the first Sabbath. And every 7 days after that, which will be the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, until the next new moon day. But brothers and sisters, remember, the scientific new moon day shown on your Gregorian calendar currently hanging on your wall does not match the biblical new moon we should observe, because our new moon occurs at first appearance dawn, while the Gregorian calendar is showing new moon at dark. Furthermore, because the days in the two calendars don't match, then that means the months don't match. They are using a solar calendar based on the sun. We, the children of Israel, are using a lunisolar calendar based on both the sun and moon. Due to the fact that we are using the moon to calculate our months, our calendar, the lunisolar calendar, is 11 days shorter than the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar. So every 3 years, we add an extra month, which is a 13th month, to bring the lunisolar and the solar calendars back in sync. Follow this math. The solar year is 365 days, right? So after 3 years, the total number of days will be 365 days times 3 years, which makes the solar years of 1095 days. Now remember, the lunisolar is 11 days short each year. So the lunisolar will be 365 per year minus 11, which means that the lunisolar will only have 354 days. Now for 3 years, the 354 lunisolar days times 3 years will give you only 1062 days. Hence, the solar years of 1095 is 33 days longer than the lunisolar, which is 1062. In other words, the lunisolar is 33 days shorter than the solar years after 3 years. That is why after 3 years, we add a 13th month, which has 33 days, to bring the lunisolar and the solar days back in sync. I know this sounds weird and complicated, but bear in mind a few things. Firstly, the Bible is clear about using the new moon to calculate our months. We are not making this up. Prove it for yourself with the references quoted. Secondly, in Genesis 1 verse 14, it is said, "Let there be lights for signs, seasons, days, and years." In verse 16, it is mentioned that the lights to be used are the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun and the stars, which is solar, for the years and the seasons. The moon, which is lunisolar, for the months, days, and Sabbaths. Thirdly, proof of a 13th month is found in Ezekiel 4 verse 4 to 6. Here Ezekiel is told to lay on both of his sides for 430 days. 390 days in verse 5, plus 40 days in verse 6. In Ezekiel 8 verse 1, he had completed the task and was seated in his house. Note, in Ezekiel 1 verse 1 to 2, it was the 4th month, the 5th day of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity. Plus Ezekiel spent another 7 days by the river. This is seen in Ezekiel 3 verse 15. Which means he started laying on his side around the 11th day of the 4th month to the 5th day of the 6th month in the 6th year. You see this in Ezekiel 8 verse 1. So Ezekiel spent over a year on his side. He started in the 5th year and he ended in the 6th year. He started in the 4th month and he ended in the 6th month. Using a solar calendar, Ezekiel would have only spent 413 days on his side. Right? However, that means he would have disobeyed Yahweh because he was told to spend 430 days. However, the year he started to the year he ended had an extra month, meaning 13 months. Because he had that extra month, he was able to finish the instructions because of the extra days that the 13th month gave him for the time frame of a year. Even if you use a very simplistic mathematical calculation on brothers and sisters, consider this. From the 5th year to the 6th year is using the solar calendar is 365 days. Right? That's 1 year. Now he started in the 4th month and he ended in the 6th month. So that's an extra 2 months. So if you add 60 days for the extra 2 months, the 365 plus 60 takes you to 425 days. Now, he started on the 11th day of the 4th month to the 5th day of the 6th month. So that means you have to subtract 6 more days from that 425 days. That takes you to 419 days. Even if you don't subtract the extra 6 days, 425 days, brothers and sisters, does not add up to 430 days. So he would have disobeyed Yahweh by spending less than the 430 days. Brothers and sisters, the math does not lie. Neither does the Bible. The Gregorian calendar on your wall does not match up with a true biblical calendar. Hence, if you are using the calendar on your wall to determine your Sabbaths, you are making a big mistake. Let us now turn to the reason for the Sabbath and when to observe the Sabbath. However, due to time constraints, let us continue in part 3. Please subscribe and join me in Module 2, part 3.